welcome to the deep dive. Today, you know how people say things tend to even out? That feeling?
Yeah, that gut feeling.
Well, we're diving into that very idea, the law of averages. You mentioned being curious about how chance and, well, probability actually work in everyday life. So we've gathered some thoughts on this so-called law.
Exactly. We'll look at how we often use it intuitively. Sometimes it's helpful, sometimes, well, not so much.
Right.
Our mission today is really to give you a clear picture, what it is, its limits, and why it's maybe more of a helpful hunch than a strict rule.
Okay, so this law of averages, when people bring it up, what's the core idea they're usually getting at, it feels like? Like randomness will balance itself out eventually.
Hmm.
Like say you flip a coin, get a crazy streak of heads, maybe 8 out of 10. The idea is that tails are somehow due next, right? To get back to that 50-50 balance we expect.
That's precisely the common understanding, yeah. This idea that randomness sort of corrects itself over time. And we see this thinking applied when looking at long-term trends. Think about, say, average rainfall for July over decades. We kind of expect the really wet or dry years to eventually balance out around that average number.
So like an invisible hand pushing things back towards the middle. Is that the vibe?
That's a good way to think about it, yeah. And interestingly, this intuition actually lines up sort of with the formal statistical concept, the law of large numbers.
Ah, okay. So there is some math behind it, kind of.
Well, the law of large numbers is the rigorous version. Think of it as the law of averages, more scientific big brother.
Gotcha.
It mathematically proves that the more you repeat a random experiment, like flipping that coin many, many times, the closer your overall results will get to the actual probability. So for a fair coin, yeah, closer and closer to 50% heads, 50% tails.
Okay, that makes sense. There are lots of trials.
Yeah.
But the sources we looked at really hammered home a big mistake people make with this, right? The gambler's fallacy. What is that exactly?
Oh, yes, the gambler's fallacy. That's crucial. It's the mistaken belief that recent past outcomes influence future independent events.
Independent being the key word there.
Absolutely. So imagine you're at a roulette wheel. It lands on red 5 times in a row. The fallacy is thinking, okay, black must be next to even things out.
But the wheel doesn't care.
Not at all. The wheel has no memory. Each spin is completely independent. The odds of red or black are exactly the same every single time, regardless of what happened before.
Right. So just because you flipped 5 heads doesn't mean the next flip is more likely to be tails.
Precisely. The universe isn't keeping score trying to balance that specific next event. Each one is fresh.
So the law of averages points to a long-term trend, but it doesn't dictate the very next outcome.
Exactly. And it's interesting, this term law of averages, it's not a formal scientific law itself, like gravity or something.
Yeah, our sources made that clear. It's more
Right.
colloquial, right? But it is connected to the history of probability theory.
It is, yeah. It sort of bubbles up from the work of mathematicians like Jacob Bernoulli and Pierre-Simon Laplace. We're talking 17th, 18th centuries.
Wow, way back.
Yeah, they were the pioneers developing the mathematical tools to understand chance and probability. Their work on how random events behave over many, many trials laid the groundwork for this intuitive idea, even if they didn't use the exact phrase, law of averages.
So it's like our everyday phrase is a kind of simplified echo of their complex math.
That's a great way to put it. It shows how these deep mathematical concepts filter down into common understanding, sometimes losing a bit of nuance along the way.
Okay, so wrapping this up for everyone listening, the big takeaway seems to be that the law of averages is useful as a general intuition about the long, long run.
Mm.
Like, yeah, weather patterns over centuries will probably average out
Mm-hmm.
for the big picture.
But, and this is the crucial bit, you absolutely cannot use it to predict the next independent event. Avoid that gambler's fallacy. Don't think that because red came up 5 times, black is somehow due. That's the core distinction, a helpful guide for long-term expectations, but not a predictor for individual independent moments.
Right, so maybe think about this. How does understanding this difference between long-term trends and individual chance events change how you look at everyday predictions? Or even risks you take? And maybe, what other common sense rules or intuitions do we use that might deserve a closer look?
Yeah, that's a good thought to leave folks with. What other intuitive laws are out there?
Definitely something to ponder. That's it for this deep dive.